Thank you. So today the topic is very interesting, electric highways. Growing up in India, we we saw electric mobility 15, 20 years back as Mahindra Riva, the small car, what generally you found in golf courses. So that was the first our introduction to the electric mobility 15, 20 years back. And then recently, suddenly, Tesla shows up in the market in US, and then we saw it in a different way that how electric mobility is changing, and then cars are coming and fabulous cars with ultimate range that it can cover 500 miles, 600 miles in one charging. And the entire perspective of electric mobility changes in India, and then our industry leaders, Tata, Mahindra, they started manufacturing their own cars, and now it's like very common to see electric cars moving into your city, your vicinity. So it's a great improvement right from the golf course to the street of cities, and then intercities we see them. Still, recently we had the range anxiety that what about how if I do not get it charged maybe after 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers. So the biggest problem was charging, how you're going to charge it, and the range anxiety and charging as well, that if you're mostly we buy car traveling from one city to another city. So if you are moving to another city, how you're going to charge it if you don't get any charging station across your highway. So that was one of the biggest problem, and that is being solved by our industry veterans. We have Mr. Nilesh Kane and N. Mohan. Thank you for joining us, and they are the veterans of the industry who had their own plan regarding how we can scale it up, how we can go on highway. And these are the two names I can bet upon if we uh, uh, are talking about uh, getting India electric highway. Now, with these lines, I would invite the chair of the session, Mr. Girish Ghatikar, for his opening remark, and then we'll move ahead.
Thank you, Anand, for that introduction to panel and introduction to me. I welcome all the panelists for this session, and the session is focusing on electric highways, particularly thinking about how do we make sure the highway driving is equipped for electric transportation. So when we talk about electric highways, we talk about enabling charging infrastructure, particularly when we for the long haul driving. And then when we talk about long haul driving, we're talking about intercity buses and trucks, right? Just as statistics about the trucks, at least in India, although they constitute not the buses, the trucks, although they constitute a very small percentage of the total vehicle population, the amount of emissions they have is significantly high. For example, 2% of truck adoption of EVs constitute reduction in 40% of emissions, right? So that's quite significant. So we can't think about decarbonization and electrification without thinking about the long haul vehicles like trucks and intercity buses. And the charging infrastructure and electric highways play a very critical role in that. An example I can give you is in terms of the range. When we talk about long haul, we're not talking about 200 kilometers or 300 kilometers. We're talking more than double of that. So Tesla, for example, and Nikola, one of the two very big companies that are making trucks in the United States, released a 500-mile truck, right? 500-mile is 800 kilometers. So on a single charge, you're running 800 kilometers. And if you want to stop and you want to charge your car, in this case, the truck, it's very important that you have a very high power charging. That comes to the second topic, which is the charging infrastructure. How do you select which highways that you need to pick, and what kind of charging infrastructure that you need to support becomes very integral part. And I'm hoping some of the panelists are going to talk about that. As an example, in the United States, there are two very important initiatives that have been started. One is called the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, and the second one is National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, or NEVI. So I represent General Motors as energy leader, and General Motors is very much involved in developing charging infrastructure, not so much particularly because they're developing trucks, big trucks or buses, but more so from developing infrastructure that can also be supporting other form of transportation, long-haul transportation, like long driving, etc., long-range driving. So from that charging infrastructure, third comes is the standards. So we need to start thinking about when trucks go from one state to the other state, one utility territory to the other territory, right? One charging station manufacturers to a different charging station manufacturer, how they can continue to interoperably charge without going through significant issue is also a very important problem we are solving, because a truck here in India, for example, might be driving all the way from Delhi down to Kanyakumari, right? So what does it mean in terms of enabling a cohesive network of charging as the trucks move from one utility territory to the other utility territory is an important, and standards and interoperability play a very critical role. So when we talk about India, I've heard that the Ministry of Road Transport and Highway, or MORTH, has made decision to convert around 12 expressways into e-highways in a very cost-effective way to encourage the electrification of the long-haul electric vehicles like trucks. So we look forward to those kind of initiatives that can jumpstart electrification, which has primarily targeted the light duty and medium duty, like electric cars, as a primary target for electrification. With that background, I'd like to open up the floor for the panelists to talk about, and I'd love to hear what they have to say about this, electric highways.
Girish. Now I would request Mr. Anant Venkateshwaran to come to the dais and do his presentation.
Thank you so much, Girish and the team, and Anand. Really appreciate the opportunity. I will begin by giving my sense of appreciation to ISGF and the team for putting together such a fantastic show. What I'm going to talk about today is something that I presented at a tutorial at Seagray last year. And let me give you just a couple of thoughts on this topic. I think, Girish, you laid the foundation for this session by talking about the whole range of efforts that have to be done and accomplished to make this a success. And we all know, you live in California, I don't need to tell you what California is doing in this process, and other parts of the world and country are doing. India is going in the whole three-wheeler space, US more in the four-wheeler and the multiple wheels for buses and trucks and cars and things of that sort. I had the unique privilege of working with the city of Long Beach when they were electrifying their bus fleet, and we provided, at that time I was with a different company, a solution, a turnkey solution to charge these buses. And a lot of the effort was not based purely on technology, it was based on the timing of the charging and how this whole scheduling would happen. Of course, infrastructure and standards play such a vital role, as you mentioned. My second interaction in this space came when, this is before your time, Girish, when GM reached out to us and Nissan reached out to us to integrate the demand response application with the head-end and telematics of the vehicle. And as I was working on doing that integration using APIs from the team at GM, I quickly found out that was my first foray into vehicle telematics. I had never understood vehicle telematics that well until I did that. But one thing, it became very clear to me that right when that project was done and demonstrated at Distributech in the US and a couple other conferences, it became very clear to me that it is not just the providing the infrastructure or even the vehicle capabilities, but it is that integration part, the seamless integration part, as you mentioned, with the local utility and possibly the local market operator. And I'll talk about that in a minute in my deck here. I only have about 2 or 3 slides, so I won't take too much time, hopefully. And why am I saying this integration is so important? Because yesterday we heard from Gemma Green about over and over again about the need for pricing signals. I mean, the fact of the matter is we are still not regulatory-wise and policy-wise in a place where we can expose the true price to the end customer, right? It's kind of a work in progress for multiple reasons, not just politics, but also from a practical perspective. Different market structures are still developing across the world. India has made some great strides in developing the local energy market here. But even between US and Europe, there are differences, and even within Europe, there are differences in terms of how these price calculations are made and exposed, right? So what I'm going to talk about today is the essentially, what do I see? A couple of case studies, or a couple of use cases of how what I see, envision as possibilities for vehicles as they go from place to place. And the same principle could be applied for an individual vehicle, or the same principle could be applied for a bus or a truck. The only difference is how this whole thing is going to get set up, and really, how is it going to be rolled out? Because whether it be electric vehicles or battery energy storage or any of those solutions, as utilities are slowly, getting into this very gray area, because traditionally utilities have felt very comfortable doing things in their forte. They model their network up to the transformer. In most cases, they don't up to the customer. Increasingly, they are beginning to do it. But once you start going at the meter and beyond the meter, and then once you start installing energy storage, as well as whether it be centralized or localized, or behind the meter, or electric vehicle charging stations, that gets into the gray area where utilities are still kind of getting their feet wet. And so this is an area where that will require a lot of work. Some utilities, C-level leadership have shared with me that they never ever want to own the asset. They want a third party to own the asset and be managed through a NOC. All they want to do with distributed energy resource management applications is interact with that NOC and be able to control them and provide signals, whether it be shed versus charge versus whatever those signals may be, and the need of that particular utility at that point in time based on local constraints. So if they know in certain feeder there is a certain charging infrastructure, and they know there are cars charging there, or there are cars parked there at a building or at a charger, then the question then becomes, is this how much charge is left in that vehicle? Can that vehicle be a source of temporary relief for them from the grid constraint at that point in time, and can they leverage that? And that all the details being worked out is done through the NOC. The utility wants to just send a signal and get the response back. So with that, I will go to my couple of slides that I talked about. Bear with me here. When Anand came to me and asked me to present this, I had about 10-15 minutes. So I'm trying to pull this together and my thoughts together kind of on the fly. Quite used to doing it, but sometimes it just takes a couple of minutes to get this thing out. So I will just share a couple of slides here just to set the stage, right? Good. So before I come to the actual slide use case I was talking about, this is kind of where we are with respect to approximately the processes and the players in today's wholesale energy market. Why am I starting with wholesale energy market? Because today, we have discussions around local distribution markets as well as local markets, but markets are not mature for that in the distribution level and local level. Today, for the most part, the most mature offerings are at the wholesale level. And so, from a process perspective, what essentially happens is there is things that happen before the market clears, there are things that happen during the market clearing, and finally the post-processing where settlement, billing, and reporting and things of that take place. And the main players in this market, as you know, are the utilities, whoever is contributing, the aggregators and things of that sort. So I envision if you don't have a local market or a distribution level market, the quote-unquote aggregator of electric vehicles, or someone who manages all these charging facilities, or someone who manages all these battery energy storage facilities, all those aggregation will take place. They will be players contributing and participating in this market. There are price reporters, of course, regulations and regulators play an important role. There are exchanges involved because there's a lot of money transaction that take take place. In many cases, exchanges are involved at the wholesale level. There is logistics involved, very critical element, and there is a bank involved because there is money involved. What is the primary challenge that we face in this kind of system right now? The primary challenge we face is that this is a mature system, and a lot of the wholesale market processes, especially the clearing processes, settlement billing, a lot of these systems have been built and put in place for a long time. But these are huge transactions. Somebody talked about credit card transactions. The amount of transactions that take place at wholesale level is huge. But what is the problem? The problem is in settlement and the payment portion today, it takes a long time. So if you look at a case in point of the current market structure, what essentially happens is if you look on the left-hand side, under the little box, you will see that a lot of the players cannot afford to participate. Why? Because the settlement data takes a long time in this process. Well, guess what? If you're going to have an electric vehicle charging infrastructure, if you're going to have somebody paying for it, right, and not paying using a credit card, but paying through some kind of a system in place, right, then you have to make sure at that point of time where they are in that grid, in that context of the electric market, wherever they are, they have to make absolutely sure that the payment can be done. And how can the payment be done? The valuation of that charging has to be done on the spot, dynamically, and then the corresponding settlement has to be done. So when you go to pay for gas right now, what do you typically do? Well, whether it's a managed station or an individually pumped station, I drive in, I put my card in the pump, I fill my car, right, and the car is full, I take the pump out, hang it up, it tells me here is the total, it comes up with the total, push the button, finalize, do you want a bill, do you not want a bill, and you drive off, right? This cannot be happening in this current structure right now. Look at the T plus 9, T plus 18 months, T plus 30, you can't have that. Can you imagine you drive in to pay to fill your car, and you don't know how much you have to pay towards the end, and the gas station does not know how much it costs? It's not practically feasible. So you got to have a system whereby, and blockchain is one possible solution. I'm not hanging my hat entirely on blockchain, but blockchain is one possible solution whereby with a slight change in the structure, the way it is set up. Today, you got the large generators, the network operators, the energy retailers, and then there's a meter operator, which is essentially the DNO in this case. You got residential and industrial customers. There is storage, there is RES, all pulling up into residential, or this picture needs to be modified. It could be under industrial customer as well. But essentially, it all goes through this energy retailer, and there is bank and traders involved, but it's a complex system today. With blockchain, what you can essentially do is each and every participant, including me or anybody else who wants to participate, or you, right? You can enjoy and participate in the trading platform essentially envisioning the way you can go in and buy stock right now. No difference, right? You have a platform, you go to expedia.com to buy your tickets. Nobody asks 1,000 questions before you buy a ticket. Thank God for that, right? Same thing, there's a trading platform. But then on the trading platform, there is a blockchain, and there are managed blockchains, right? This could be a blockchain managed at the market operator level, at the wholesale level, or could be managed by the local utility. So what that essentially does is all these agreements and everything is already put in place in advance. The cost structure agreements is all built in, so through a smart contract. So based on wherever you're coming from and whatever your smart contract envisions, your charging rate is quickly determined the minute you pull up and you fill the gas, you charge your battery, right? So without going into much details, I promised about the two case studies. This is an example of a smart home prosumer microgrids, how all this different setup takes place. You can see the different consumers, who's prosumers, and then how they all communicating to a blockchain. On the bottom picture, the energy sharing coordinator in this case could be the local utility or a grid operator, right? So here's the use case to it I built up to, right? So I wanted to share all of that to show you a couple of practical use cases, right? So first use case is you got a utility A. In case in point, Girish lives under what? PG&E, right? So let's say in this case, Girish's house, it's PG&E. There's a utility A blockchain, and Girish's house, and he's charging his car. There's a meter and a main breaker, and so he charges in his house. Well, guess what? The transaction is submitted to the permission blockchain. What happens next is the transaction is validated by the blockchain. The utility bills Girish, and Girish knows how much he's got to pay. Well, what's the benefit here? The benefit here is Girish already has an understanding with the utility. He already has committed to some of the carbon credits and things of that sort. All his discounts and everything is already built in as part of that quote-unquote smart contract rather than just a bill, right? So today, Girish has a contract with the utility, and he's not just a ratepayer, right? Now, same thing happens with the permission utility B blockchain. It can go on and on and on, right? And this particular thing could be Girish charging his car in this house, or it could be Penske, for example, having a big, huge center charging their trucks in their Penske facility sitting in a PG&E territory or any other utility territory or a Tata Power territory, whatever the case may be, right? So now I go to a slightly more complex case study, right? Here, I'm showing an example of what happens in real life and what I believe will happen in real life. Girish won't be charging his car every day in his house. That will be great if he can do it, but most likely not. I travel 3 weeks a month. I can't charge my car all the days in my house because when the car will stay in my house, I'll be outside, right? So here is an example where you got two permissioned utility nodes. Now, bear in mind, from an envisioning perspective, this could be two utilities. It could be two market operators. So for example, let's say I'm driving from CalISO territory to a MISO territory in the US. CalISO manages the market in California and a little bit around California. MISO is right around the Midwest Chicago area, and I'm driving from CalISO from California to Chicago, right? So here, there is two permission blockchain nodes. There is also what is called as a public blockchain, which is a public blockchain. It could be wholesale market permissioned, or it could be one of the above. It could be, there is some designs and flexibility based on the need, right? So now here, what happens is, in case of, let's take Girish's example again. Girish is charging his car in his house, right? Now he's living in, let's say in this case, in permission utility B's charger. No, he's living in permission utility A node, right? But he's in Chicago. So he's in ComEd territory perhaps, right? And maybe under MISO, right? And why am I saying CalISO, MISO is important? Because those two are two different market operators. The price structures are different. Some of the terms and conditions are different and things of that sort, right? And the agreements they have with the local utility is also different, right? So he's driven to ComEd territory. Now, Girish's contract, mind you, is with PG&E, right? He doesn't have a contract. ComEd does not know who Girish is, right? As famous that he is, ComEd does not know who Girish is, right? So now what Girish goes to Chicago, he charges. Now what happens is the transaction is submitted to ComEd's blockchain. ComEd says, wait a minute, I don't know who this guy is because he's not my customer, right? So he says, you are roaming. He's roaming. Just as, in cell phone, you got the roaming capabilities, right? He's roaming right now. So what ComEd blockchain will do, permission by utility node will do, he'll submit the transaction to the wholesale market permission blockchain or a public blockchain managed by a third party, or could be managed by the local market operator, possibly, right? Or like collaboration between multiple market operators. Any of the above is possible based on regulatory and policy approvals. Now he submits this transaction to the public blockchain. The public blockchain goes for a quick search and comes back and says, aha, Girish is not a member of ComEd. ComEd does not know who Girish is. But guess what? PG&E knows who Girish is, and CalISO knows who Girish is. So guess what? I know what rates, it calculates the rates quickly and spits out what Girish has got to pay to ComEd. Now, what's the benefit here? It's very simple. I envision that if you are living in PG&E territory, and especially in Girish's case, he's got a special rate going with PG&E in exchange for some of the green credits or some commitments he signed up. Maybe he put solar on his rooftop to give some of that back to the grid. So Girish has got a special rate with PG&E, which is utility A, where he lives. Utility B, ComEd, Girish has got no contract. So guess what? If Girish were to pay using a credit card, he would end up paying a lot of money to charge in ComEd territory. So now, because of this particular agreement here, Girish ends up paying what he pays at home, right? So it kind of socializes, but at the same time, nobody's really paying for it in the sense that it's not like somebody is subsidizing Girish. It is just that enabling it through blockchain, he's able to pay what he should be paying to begin with, a fair charge. And the utility is able to provide that to Girish for that fair charge. Why? Because the utility is working with the wholesale commission blockchain. Now you're going to ask me, what would Comet gain from this? That is where there's also this permissioned wholesale market blockchain. There is smart contracts between the wholesale operator and the utility. So some kind of transactions take place behind the scenes to get Girish what he wants. Okay? So this is a use case I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Anand, for this excellent perspective. At least you brought up the commerce part of this entire thing in the beginning, and now ensured that, yes, the payment mechanism there. And now we also, for India, this was also a problem in the beginning, and we tried fixing it in a very shortcut way. We have FASTags across, we use FASTags when we travel from one city to another city or one state to another state. So similarly, we thought of having a green tag. There is Vahan, there is a facility where you have information about all the vehicles who are running on the road. So they know you as a vehicle owner. And with the help of this very similar working green tags that can be put at charging stations also, and that will recognize your vehicle and you can pay the way you are paying in FASTags. And that will solve the larger problem. And that was the smart way to at least find out a cheap solution or very cost-effective solution in the beginning. And then let's see that how it goes up, and then we can move ahead. So now I would invite Mr. Nilesh Kane to put his, how he is going to revolutionize these electrical highways, and then getting us see that, yes, ensuring that, yes, there are charging stations across, and you can travel from one city to another city. Please.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Girish, and ISGF for this opportunity to speak about the electric highways. So far as the electricity and electrical vehicle adoption is concerned, we have seen in last 2 years journey, there are three, the major important issues what we come across. One is affordability, the price of the electric vehicle. Second is the accessibility, the availability of the chargers. And third is the availability. Obviously, there are many chargers across the India, but we found that because of the communication issue and because of the electrical reliability issue, the availability of the chargers. And that is exactly the problem of range anxiety. So in today's subject of electric highways, the major issue of the range anxiety, and that's why the people are not coming out of the city and moving around the highways. And this challenge we come across, and the Tata Power has taken the initiative. I would like to share, our experience on that. So this is, typically the Tata Power's public charger is concerned. The very important part, what we see, the charge point operator, as a charge point operator, we have around 3,000 odd chargers out of the total availability of the chargers in India, around 6,000 chargers. And, initially we started with the slow chargers, but over a period of time, we found that, people do not have a patience, especially they are on the highways or they are into the commercial centers, and therefore the number of fast chargers over a period of time we have increased. We have 1,000 odd fast chargers, and the slow chargers were around 2,000 slow chargers we have. Also, over a period of time, what we found that the unavailability of the charger and the customer dissatisfaction is the major issue we come across, and therefore the round-the-clock network operation center is something the need of an hour. And that's why, just like in an electrical system, we have a SCADA center, we have a network operation center where all our chargers, across the cities and across the highways are communicating, and therefrom, we can give the well-in-time information to us. So obviously, we have a mobile app on the Apple as well as, all the sectors, and, the customer get a real-time information whether the charger in the nearby area is available or not. So that network operation center is really helpful to give an information to us for the corrective action as well as to the customers whether to go around the nearby charger or not. The EZ Charge application supported by, the HOPS platform and the user chargers, wallet, online payments, online charging, these facilities were already given for the convenience of the customers when customers are charging from our charging stations. Availability, we started with 70% availability as initially I mentioned. the availability was a major issue. But right now, the 95% and additional availability we have given. And utilization, obviously, we started below 1% utilization, and number of vehicles are increased. And there is a growth of around demand of electric vehicle is more than 30% in last financial year. Now utilization is around 2.7%. Bus depot, because, e-highways, when we discuss about the e-highways, the commercial vehicles and the buses, and they will ply on the highways or they will ply on the state highways or the state roads. So right now, we are present so far as the EV e-buses is concerned. We are present in Ahmedabad, Delhi and Mumbai. We have around 7 bus depots and around 234 chargers of 150 kilowatt capacities are there. 234 numbers of the charge point operators are there, 150 kilowatt and 250 kilowatt capacity as a single gun or the double gun capacity is there, and 99% availability is there so far as the bus EV charger is concerned. There is also a demand that mostly the bus charger capacities are above 1 megawatt. So green, the EV charger, this concept has also come up, and many, the bus operators or the local authorities who are operating these buses are demanding from, the green, the EV chargers for the buses. So we are providing the green power through the, the captive solar, such that, the power used by these EV chargers will be the green. So potentially when we are talking about it, EV is a green initiative, the power used is also a green power, to have a best of the perception about that. So the projects, in the pipelines are, right now we have in Jammu, Kashmir and Bangalore in the big way. There are 5 cities, Surat, Bangalore, Calcutta, and, the Jammu, Kashmir, that is the Jammu and Srinagar. These are in the pipeline, and in time to come, we will have around 1,000 charge points so far as, the EV buses is concerned. And these are some pictures, indicating that these buses are flying. So far as the highways is concerned, the first highway on which the buses are going to ply between the Srinagar and Jammu. So otherwise in Mumbai and Delhi, when we have provided the EV chargers, they are within the cities. But the first time, we are going with, the EV highways or the e-highways, because there will be bus movement between Jammu and Kashmir. And therefore, the number of charger in bus depots in Jammu and bus depot in Kashmir, along with that, more than 100 chargers will be there on both the side of Jammu-Kashmir highway. So this will be the first e-highway which will be coming up with the DC fast chargers with 150 kilowatt capacity. So under Smart City program, the Jammu-Srinagar highway has 248 kilometers of the highway. And as I mentioned, there will be around 100 chargers on both the sides. Highway coverage, we have done a joint, as I told, the range anxiety is the major problem. So we have done a joint exercise with Tata Motor that where exactly, the number of vehicles have been sold more, because that clearly indicates, the need and necessary of the EV chargers in that city as well as on the highways. So sale of the vehicles, what are the future projections, what is the demand from the particular city or the particular state, movement of the vehicles between the cities, because we have identified by doing a very detailed research that which are the highways or which are the roads on which generally the movement happens. For example, Mumbai-Pune is one highway, Bangalore is one more highway, the Bangalore and Mysore is one more highway. Generally on that highways, the electric vehicles ply, between the highways, between these two cities, there is a lot of movement. But Pune, Mahabaleshwar is also one area on which a lot of e-vehicle movement is expected, and the people are very interested to adopt that. So additional charger provision, for the critical locations, especially at the food malls and all, especially at the major hotels and all. So this is something, a very detailed research we have carried out based on the number of vehicles sold and the need from the consumers, because we have right now more than 1,000 consumers of the passenger vehicles which are actively using our app, and they are actively using our chargers. So we have done a survey and they have given, the input that right now we are, operating within the cities or between home and office and all, but we will be happy if, the number of charger availability and our range anxiety problem will be solved. We will be happy to move. For example, from a lot of people are there who would like to travel from Mumbai to Pune if the number of chargers available on the highway instead of going, inside the cities and all. So this is something what we have carried out, and, the total number of highways in the city. Right now our presence is there on 255 highways across the India, and we have covered right from south to east and, the north to west. and, the number of highways 255, and the number of highway chargers, the required chargers are around 2,000 chargers will be required based on the present sale of the passenger vehicles. And right now, the number of city chargers will be required around 1,200 chargers to meet, the requirement of the customers who are already owning the passenger vehicles. The current status, what we have used based on the usage, based on the accessibility, we have presence of around 193 highways, and the 763 chargers are already there. Out of that, around 300 fast chargers are there, and the usage of the fast charger is, substantially very, very high. The number of city chargers right now, we have 500 plus chargers, and the capacity of chargers, obviously, DC chargers 25 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt, and 60 kilowatt based on the different vehicle make and all. The target is the 100% energization by this financial year. And this is a pictorial where exactly our chargers are present pan-India. One initiative we have taken, to give the confidence of the electric vehicle user. So recently we have carried out, Kanyakumari to Kashmir drive of around 4,000 kilometers in 4 days. In 100 hours, this drive has been completed jointly by the Tata Motors and Tata Power. And, the number of charging points used are 155 charging points we have used. Our 100 charging points of Tata Power has been used, and the Tata Motor has used 80% of the charger of Tata Power. And, the enough charging stations are available. This is only, to break the anxiety of the people that whether we can move with the electric vehicles on the longer way. And this has proven, we are taking this initiative now between eastern part also to the southern part, and then southern part to the northern part, to give the confidence, because nowadays, the people are purchasing electric vehicle, but they are restricting use to the city part only. So to take them out on the electric highway is the major challenge, and this is initiative we have taken, and this is really giving a confidence to the people, to adopt for the electric vehicles. In the current scenarios, the highways are covered with the charger capacity of 25 and 30 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt, and to some extent 60 kilowatt, and the 2 gun chargers of 120 kilowatt capacity. And to accommodate the chargers for the trucks and, the commercial vehicles, which is an upcoming market in time to come, we need a charger of 150 kilowatt capacity or the 2 gun chargers of 300 kilowatt capacity. And, the technology is readily available. Only, it is a chicken or egg. The first electric trucks when will come, and when they will start plying on the highways, immediately the charging infrastructure can very well be provided. But yes, we have taken a trial of 150 kilowatt charger, which is suitable for, the commercial vehicles and truck. Requirement, the presence of opportunity across the highways, and, the promotion of the electric trucks and buses. Anyway, it will start plying between the highways, but the truck is something necessary, to make them fully electric. So these are the major points, which is required to promote the e-highways. The major challenges, what we could see is that the standardization. The second challenge, major challenge, is on the highway. Getting a space is very difficult. We are reached out around 150, 185, the highways, but we have seen that getting an electricity connection, for the slow charger, getting a 10 kilowatt connection is not difficult. But on the highways, if you ask for a 100 kilowatt, 150 kilowatt, or 300 kilowatt connection, no, the utility or the electricity board is ready. They are saying that you have to invest, you have to put a transformer, you have to put a substation, So this is becoming very difficult. We have around 1,000 chargers, installed, but we are waiting for the electricity connection. We are talking of, a lot of things, just-in-time business and all, ease of doing business and all. But getting electricity connection from, the different utility is a very difficult job. As way, the accessibility is very important. We have many chargers, and then the person has to go, out of the highway, and then he has to charge that vehicle and again come on the highways and all. The customers are not ready to do that. They want, the readily fast chargers available on the highway. And getting a space on a highway is also a very difficult job. So these are the challenges what we are facing to provide, the charging infrastructure facilities on a highway, getting a space and getting a quick connections from, the electricity board. And when, for example, the charger cost, you need to invest around 3 to 4 times of the charger cost for, electricity infrastructure, and it is very difficult. And you will not believe in, for example, in the southern state like Kerala, our presence was very low. Reason behind getting a connection there, we are waiting for last more than 6 months to get an electricity connection. So these are the challenges only, to boost the electric highways so far pan-India or across the states, and, especially on the national highways on which, there will be a huge requirement of the charging infrastructure, and which will, in turn boost, the electric commercial vehicles, buses, and movement of these passenger vehicles. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you for this excellent perspective. I'm very happy knowing that now we have chargers, or at least they're in setting up across highways, having capacity more than 150 kilowatt to 300 kilowatts. So it's the same charging station we are going to use, whether you are traveling in your car or in your bus or in your now truck. There is another very interesting study ISUW is doing to understand that how electric freight corridors can be created. So we are going to use the same infrastructure what buses are using. Again, the problem is the integration is one of the problem, that how the same charger can be utilized by a bus or by a truck also. So that would depend upon how better we can sync, both the OEMs can sync with each other, or maybe a individual charging point operator can sync with both of them and provide this facility across the charging. And this is going to solve a big problem in terms of, we always talk about net zero and then carbon emission. So the buses and cars amount, they are in numbers, or if we talk about in terms of the carbon they emit, it's only 20% of how all collectively all trucks and bigger vehicles are emitting carbon across the roads. So I'm very happy. Thank you for this. Now I would invite Mr. N. Mohan, who is CEO EV Cell Delhi, and they have a wonderful plan. It would be very interesting to know from him that how the entire Delhi city where we live is going to get revolutionized by the e-vehicles or e-buses coming into city. And there is another perspective also. I mean, once he finishes it, then we can discuss this in detail. So please, Mr. Mohan, please come to the desk. Thank you.
Thank you, Girish. Thank you, Anand and ISGF for this opportunity. So I don't have a presentation to make, but broadly I want to put in the perspective of Delhi, like what actions we have taken in the public transportation segment. If you look at the heavy-duty vehicle segment, especially when considering electric buses, one of the heavy-duty vehicle in e-bus in electric segment. So technology is proven. So up till 200 kilometers, we have seen the performance of electric buses are almost comparable to the IC counterparts. In Delhi, we're operating close to 300 electric buses, which constitute 4% of our existing fleet. In next 4 years' time, by 2025, 2026, we should be able to induct more than 8,800 e-buses, which will almost completing close to 80% of our fleet to electric. So in the previous presentation by Tata, we have seen the utilization levels are very low for the charging infrastructure. So whenever we talk about the electric highways, the global concept being these would be the highways having the overhead cables, where the vehicles on the go could be charged. And this could be for heavy duty vehicles, including the electric buses and the electric trucks. Now, India also, close to 70% of the freight is done through the road transportation. With the increased infrastructure and development in the road transportation, this demand is going to further increase. So there is a need to focus on electrifying the truck segment too. But if you look at the FAME2 policy and the subnational policy, like the electric vehicle policy of the states, so far there is no recognition for the trucks, electric truck is concerned. So almost most of the policies are silent on the truck segment is concerned. The reason could be multiple. One of the reason could be we don't have the electric vehicle model in the truck segment. So although thanks to the demand aggregation done by CSL also, so where government has acted as a consumer. If you look at electric buses an example, we're able to give a clear demand to the OEMs through the demand aggregations, which was done through multiple state transport and decking. Can a similar exercise be done for the truck segment? The larger question is then the truck applications are different, means the payload capacities are different, the applications are different, and even these trucks are being used for the long haul distance traveling too. So there is a limitation with respect to technology is concerned. The solution could be increasing the battery capacity. So once we go for a larger battery capacity in the vehicle segment, somewhere we need to compromise on the payload capacity also. So eventually it's not a solution which the industry is looking at. The only solution could be like enabling more charging infrastructure along the highways and the expressways. The FAME2 policy has done some of the prominent work, I would say. So they have considered 16 highways and 9 expressway under the FAME2 policy for putting up the EV charging stations. So typically they are targeting close to 1,500 electric vehicle charging stations along these highways and the expressway. And these would be more like cable connected charging stations. Fortunately, in India, if you look at the electric four-wheeler segment, the OEMs are inclined towards CCS2 connectors, and the same we would see in the electric buses also. And perhaps I would believe the same connectors or same technology would be adopted for the electric truck segment too. So, having said that, the only solution could be whenever we are conceiving or building up a charging infrastructure, we need to build up a scalable product. So right now the FAME2 maybe like perhaps we're looking for an infrastructure of say around 50 kilowatt or 60 kilowatt, maybe up till 100 kilowatt. If the same infra could be like upscaled or upgraded to like higher capacity, say 240 kilowatt or 250 kilowatt capacity, then the use cases and the applications would be multiplied. We'll have a multiplier effect. I meant to say the same charger could be used for the four-wheeler segment and same could be used for electric buses in the fleets too. So this will amplify the use cases. The limitation for the highway electrifications are broadly into two segments. One is the land. If you look at the land availability along the highways, so either it's limited or too expensive for the charge point operators to gain those land parcel. The second is the infrastructure, which we call the utility infrastructure. So at least in the urban areas, we have seen there is a better access for getting those utility connections. But when we go out of the urban areas, maybe like along the highways and the expressway, always there is a limitation for getting that distribution infrastructure. So what would be the solution? Because like once we have the investment goes much higher than a charger investment, the economics of operating the EV charging station along the highways and the expressways would be defeated. There could be like two-way regulatory approach could be thought, where maybe like since MORTH and NHA are enabling these electric highway concept, so they could look at like earmark or demarcating some of the land passes along the highways and the expressway, specifically reserved for putting up the EV charging stations. And here, like since highways and expressway cross to multiple state boundaries, and each states will have different supply code regulations or distribution utility regulations. So here, like we need to work with multiple states for getting those connections. So DISCOM could bring in a concept for utility-ready infrastructure. When I say utility-ready infrastructure, it means the state utility can bring in the infrastructure up to a desired location or the specified location. And subsequently, the CPOs could be onboarded easily for putting up and operating the EV charging station. So here we are trying to dissecting two major issues. One, the upfront cost for putting up the upstream infrastructure is borne by the state entities through either through the FAME2 scheme or maybe like appropriate state fund. Right now, the FAME2 scheme, the limitation is the subsidy is only limited to the charger cost. So there is no subsidy for the upstream infrastructure product of the distribution company. So which itself is a major cost and investment for the charge point operator. So perhaps I think there is a need and then strong demand also from the industry. If the FAME can be extended for the upstream infrastructure, ways such fund could be accessed or made available for a distribution company, then putting up that distribution utility infrastructure along the highways and the expressway would be more economical, and maybe perhaps the charge point operators like Tata Power, maybe some other the CPOs could focus on putting up the charging infrastructure required for different vehicle segment. This is some specific application we need to look at. So Delhi also, like apart from operating e-buses for intra-city applications, we're also encouraging the intercity operations of the e-buses. So some of the private operators, so they're running these e-buses from say Delhi to Jaipur and Delhi to Chandigarh. So where they are putting up their own captive charging stations, typically more an origin and destination charging facility for the e-buses. But always they like to have more opportunity charging on the route while ferrying the customer. So enabling such infrastructure makes more sense for the country. But looking at the limitations what we have presently with respect to the getting those grid access along the highways and expressway needs to be discussed, and I think the broader framework has to be structured at the national level So these discoms can play a major role in building up ready infrastructure, and perhaps that would amplify the results too. Since the theme is on the truck segment, to let me put some of the broad concept. If you look at the truck industry, the 70% of the truck industry, the ownerships are under the or with the small operators, and typically these operators own less than 7 trucks. And expecting them to lead this transition to electric trucks might be a might be a big ask from the government or from the industry sector is concerned, because these small operators, I think, they are little risk averse. They may not like to take that lead in putting some of the trucks for operations. So what could be the way out here? I think one is the financing. I think financing has to be ensured for this, particularly for this heavy duty vehicle segment, including the trucks and the electric buses, which will simplify the process of getting and onboarding these electric vehicle segment. But slowly we are seeing some of the corporates taking a lead, and where they're committing that they would be deploying the electric trucks for the different applications. So I think recently we have seen Volocta has launched the electric truck. It's a good indication, and also they're able to get that homologation. So I think industry is getting a maturity, and industry able to bring in more model, which will help us define more applications for different use cases. And once we do it, I think building up infra and expanding the applications are much easier. At the city level, we are doing a similar study, so along with the International Council on Clean Transportation. In Delhi also, like, there are different departments, be it horticulture department or the Delhi Jal Board and the PWD. So they also use truck for different use cases. So we're doing a study where we're trying to take the data from these different departments, and we're trying to analyze like how these existing ICE trucks could be electrified. So we're doing a small simulation also just to understand their payload requirement, their travel requirement, their range requirement, the loading pattern. And once we have this such data available, we would like to build a simulation around it, and we want to show that how an electric truck could be like used for this kind of application. So this would help industry also to at least assess and build a product which is more suiting the industry requirement. So these are some of the inputs from my side. I think I would be happy to at least like answer any of the questions during the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mohan, for the excellent perspective of how, I mean, considering trucks also as a part of your regular business, and then thinking about how we can have the charging infrastructure across the highways and to roll it out. One of the problem what Mr. Nilesh discussed is getting the charging, getting the connection from DISCOMs is a problem, and they do have different regulations also. So we are working on a project wherein we are doing analysis and pilot also, feasibility analysis and pilot also for electric truck especially. And we also face the similar problems. It's like the charging, where do you get the trucks? So the first problem was, how do you get the truck? So we try out finding trucks in India, and there are very few manufacturers. I would say one or two. Buses are there, where we have electric bus, Tata, JBM, and several others are there in bus industry. But in truck industry, it was like really difficult. We could find one, but they do not have a container-based truck. It's like that's supposed to multimodal transport, where if we can have a truck what can carry a container, that will solve lots of problems, rather than a very specific truck what carries construction materials. So finding, then we thought of looking into the retrofit model, that whether is it feasible, and the problem what Mr. Mohan discussed about the cost. And suppose from Delhi to Ludhiana for that matter, if I have to move a cargo from Delhi to Ludhiana, and I go and all small freight operators, I go and ask them that you take an electric truck and then you move your cargo from Delhi to Ludhiana, then the first question is that my freight is going to be the same. It's 40,000. If I carry this in IC engine truck or electric truck, and then you are asking me to buy electric truck that comes in 1 crore. So it does not make sense, and they're right at their place, that how does it make sense to them. So, and very similar condition when I go, I mean, apart from Tata's and Mahindra, they're big business houses in the country, but being an individual charge point operator across the highway, or anybody who wants to venture into this business, and it's a very capital intensive business across highways, you are planning to set up your own charging station. This is going to cost you almost more than 40-50 lakhs, and at least this much. And you put for bigger charging stations, or for bigger trucks and buses, where you have the capacity in order to more than 120 kilowatt or 240 kilowatt. So the challenge is, after investing this much money on highways, and the risk is, what is the footfall? What is the footfall? If I have I created a charging station, I invested lots of money, maybe the financing can be a solution, and there can be modalities. But once I have put in money, then the biggest risk is who is ensuring that I'll get enough business? And my occupancy as a charge point operator, a charging station, is more than 70-80%, so that I do my ROI. So while talking to the charge point operators, their risk is I don't foresee that enough occupancy of my charging station. So I'm afraid. If you ensure that this will happen, then we can think of, because it does not make the very good business case for them. So in isolation, when we see charge point operators, or for that matter trucks, also buses are available, and mostly they are moving inside the city. But on highways, trucks are more appropriate. We think of, obviously buses would also move from one city to another city, or maybe one state to another state. So using the same infrastructure is the key. But once we look this problem in isolation, it seems very challenging. But when you see into cohesion, that everything, the entire ecosystem, that I have a business from transporting goods, or maybe it can be a bus also, from one place to another place, and I have a charging station, what can I make sure that is occupied 70% of the time, and then I have a bus also. The cost is one of the biggest problem, where buses are subsidized, but trucks are not subsidized yet. There is no regulation for the subsidy of trucks. So there, I think it needs to be taken care of from regulatory perspective also, or while making the regulation, that some portion of subsidy can be given to them. The another solution, what looks, or what appears is, batteries can be availed in a service model, because the battery is the biggest cost in bus or truck, for that matter, once we have enough charging station across highway. So the range anxiety is solved, and you have, after 100 kilometers, if you find one charging station, that problem is solved. But but if you talk about trucks, still, if you have enough battery on board, you are going to lose the capacity of the load you are carrying. So that is another challenge. So if batteries can be served in a service model, then that 30-40% of the problem can be taken care of, because that 40% cost is the battery cost. If 30-40% subsidy can be given to the truck owners, or OEMs, or we can facilitate a model. So almost we are, and it's solving 60-70% of the problem is solved only by these two good initiatives. And then the cost of the truck is almost at par with the ICE engine truck cost. And that looks like a better solution once you go on ground, and then you talk to different stakeholders, very important stakeholders on the ground, and then you see. So if I say that while planning your charging stations, if you synchronize your strategy or your plan or your business with the OEM, with the bus manufacturer or the truck manufacturer who is actually going to use your charging infrastructure across the highway, they do have their own plan. They also want to put their buses rolling on the road, and they have their plan. If this can be synchronized, then I think this is going to solve the bigger problem. And in cohesion, if you look on the entire system, then it seems working. It looks like a very good business case where every key stakeholder has their own contribution and their own piece of the share what can be made from there. So we would start with questions now. If any question from audience we can take, and then any question? Yes. So please identify yourself and then you can ask your question.
Yeah, I have two questions. I hope I have time for that. One was to Anand Venkateswaran regarding your charging model, how to charge for that thing. The present system we have for mobile roaming, what is the problem with that? Why can't we utilize that model instead of the blockchain model you have suggested? And the second question was for all of you. Mr. Gadkari has been talking about charging on the move on at least two highways. That is the Delhi-Mumbai highway and the Yamuna Expressway. These two roads, he has talked about charging on the move. There is no infrastructure right now. No solution has really been offered. And I see also that nothing has been talked about in today's talk also. Nobody has talked about this particular solution. So where does that stand?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So it's a genuine comment there about the model, the use case that I talked about, right? See, the problem, and this goes back to the difference between the telecom industry and the utility industry, right? If we could send electrons through the air, a lot of us would not be here, right? So essentially, the telecom industry has definitely gone miles ahead in terms of, and there's a very popular joke that we say that if, between Alexander Graham Bell and if Thomas Alva Edison, if those two came back from the dead today, Graham Bell would look at this and go, what the hell is this? This is not a phone. I didn't even invent this. What is this, right? Whereas Edison would come back and see the infrastructure and go, wow, it's still the same, more or less. So there is a fundamental difference between the telecom models and electric utility models, right? And again, I'm not an expert in the Indian model because I'm based in the US for many years and I've been working with utilities in the US. I'll tell you the fundamental premise here of the use case that I gave, right? The fundamental premise is if you're going to build those electric highways that Girish talked about and the session talked about, right? You are going to have a combination of use cases. It's not, I just gave one use case. There are multiple use cases you have to look at. But fundamentally, these highways are probably not going to restrict themselves to one utility territory, number one. They're also not going to restrict themselves to one market operator territory, right? So the question is, what is the way in which you make absolutely sure that some level of structure is built in whereby the utility and the market operator, the pricing signals that typically a balancing authority provides in the context of the utility, and the car is going from distribution center to distribution center through multiple distribution networks, and the congestions and the parameters of each of those distribution networks are not the same. So I would like to think that if you have to be fair and equitable, if I'm driving from, let's say, from Los Angeles to Bakersfield in California, Bakersfield being a lot less populated, probably a lot less congested, Los Angeles being extremely congested with highly dense population center. When I say congestion, I mean electrical congestions, not just the traffic congestion, right? I'd like to think that as you factor in the price, if you're roaming in Bakersfield versus roaming in Los Angeles, on paper, today you will, in mobile situation, you may end up paying the same rate. But from an electrical utility situation, it's not the same, because for the electrical utility to supply you one last megawatt or one last kilowatt in Los Angeles is different from the price to supply the one last kilowatt in Bakersfield. That whole concept, I've simplified it, but the whole concept led to what is called as the locational pricing model, locational margin pricing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, bear in mind that as this vehicle is going from place to place to place along the electrical highway, you are not only going through different distribution feeders and all the distribution centers that we talked about, it is also, it may cross what I call as the balancing authority territories. I'll give you a case and example. Or it may not, but the case and example. Let's take the state of Pennsylvania, okay? The price of electric power in western Pennsylvania bordering Ohio, where the minute I cross Ohio, the famous Cleveland, Ohio, right? And I go into Pennsylvania, and I go into any small town there, the price of electric power there is 3 cents a kilowatt hour, give or take, 3 to 4, okay? I go further east in Pennsylvania, cross the Allegheny Mountains, and I go into Philadelphia. Now I'm paying 12, 13, 14. In fact, I just got my wife, as I was here, she sent me this text message and she said, you know, and let me read this to you. This is very interesting because the context is very appropriate. So she sends me this message and she says, Excel Energy is going to raise your rates. My on-peak rate for Excel Energy in Denver, right now I'm paying about 9 cents a kilowatt hour. My on-peak rate from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday in summer is going to be how much? 29 cents. It is not even going double, it's going triple almost. And this is just the summer rate, right? So the point I'm making is that when you factor in, so the first you got the distribution centers, then you're crossing major transmission corridors where transmission capability is not there. See, if you had the ability to provide, and the transmission networks were very built out everywhere, and you had the ability to take the power you generate to the point of consumption, it is very easy. But here you're talking about a load that is not fixed in one place. So if I'm driving from western Pennsylvania to eastern Pennsylvania, I'm driving through so much of that problem. So somebody's got to pay for that quote-unquote deferred transmission charge equivalent, right? Or some kind of a tariff, right? So
correct.
There is a lot of tariff modifications also. So I think it's a lot more complex than the mobility example. But there is one more factor on top of that. I never said that blockchain is going to solve every problem and get you food on your table. Blockchain is one technology that can be used, and what blockchain enables for you is that smart contract, which is very hard to mess with. And there is going to be multiple contracts in the use case that I gave you. The contract between the end user, like myself or Girish in this case I was telling you, and your local utility. The local utility and the market operator, or between two different utilities or two different market operators. There's multiple contracts in place. So what blockchain does enable is preventing those modifications of those contracts, and provides a certain level of integrity to the whole process, and also enables a quick translation from the charging part to the payment part. So I know that it's a complex situation, but I hope I try to address at least some of what you talked about.
No, thanks. What you say, I do understand it completely, one with another. But the differences you're talking about, we in India, for telecom sector, for the mobile business, we have gone through this, and most of these problems were resolved by the regulatory body for how to balance the bill between different parts, different cities, different states. All that was done. And I think there is a model already available with us. Today, of course, my roaming charges are the same whether I'm in Delhi or I'm sitting in Mumbai or wherever. But that is a later instance. But whatever else you talk about, crossing the border, going into a different balancing authority, all that was there. And we have gone through this through mobile business. So billing was always collected at my place. All I need is my ID, which in case of my mobile phone is a SIM card. But in any other case, it would be probably my FASTag or something similar to FASTag. I just need to charge, and the bill would revert back to me at my home location.
Can I intervene? Anant was solving the Western problem. My solution was for India. It's like have a green tag and then you can move across. And charges vary. It's the regulatory affair where you have the different tariff across the route. So once you go to the another city, another state, the tariff goes different. And then, but that can be accommodated. It's not the basic problem in the beginning that you have a balance in your card and then you can move across and get it charged by any charging point. So it's in the making. This will, come later, sooner or later it will come to public. This is the first solution we think of, the easiest solution to solve this bigger problem, and then we can go ahead. I'll take up your second question. Yeah. Your second question was that you want to have charging on the go. And you don't find it.
Mr. Gadkari has specifically announced this as the possibility for Delhi-Mumbai Expressway and the Yamuna Expressway.
Right.
I don't see that infrastructure right now
right.
at
So
all.
I'll
But he wants dedicated lanes on this expressway with charging either embedded in the road or overhead lines, whichever way, which
Right.
would mean, of course, the vehicles using them will also have to be modified accordingly. But
So-
I don't see anything happening in that direction, but he keeps on announcing it every now and then.
Right. I'll tell you why it is not happening so fast. Let us understand why it is not happening. You heard from Nilesh that it's been 6 months. He is wondering that whether I am able to get a electricity connection from a discom. Another challenge. It's not a problem, it's a challenge. Now, on the ground, things are very different than what you see on television or several good discussion like this. So once you go to the ground, you want a connection, you want to establish a charging station. The LT line, the regulation for giving you a capacity of connection for LT line varies from state to state. One state is the cap is 50 kilowatt. So you cannot put a charger of 120 kilowatt on LT line. One challenge. So we have been talking to regulators also all across that how to fix it, what is the regulation, where they can help us. And we are trying to identify all those problems, all those gaps, what is not letting this happen. What is not letting this happen. So that is another problem. Charging is also based on the kind of battery you are moving with. If the C rating is 1 or 2 or 3, so that would make you charge very quickly. The battery, the C rating, the battery which we are carrying it is like 1 or less. So as we go ahead, we have, better, it's very classical chicken and egg problem that there are no charges. That is why I don't have a bus or electric truck. That's the first problem I was talking about. And there are no buses running across the highway. That is why I don't have a charging station. So we are moving in the right direction. Nilesh talked about 2,000 charging stations coming across highways, having capacity 150 kilowatt to 240 kilowatt. So this is a infrastructure thing. What will take time? It's like it's not that 8 o'clock in the evening you hear something and then tomorrow morning things are set. This will take at least 6 months or 8 months or an year to be able to see it on highways and things happening.
To add upon, to answer your question on Delhi-Mumbai and Yamuna Expressway, rather there are 100 highways we have identified, and there is a plan of adding around 2,000 chargers in next 2 years. And Delhi-Jaipur, already we have a presence of around 20 chargers. Delhi-Chandigarh, we have a presence of few chargers. So on all highways, right now the presence is not so high, but as...
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're talking of charging stations, individual charging station. But
Yeah.
what Mr. Gadkari is talking about is on-the-move charging,
Okay.
so, which requires either embedded wireless kind of charging or overhead lines.
Yeah, so far as the
Neither of these exist.
Yeah, so far as the wireless charging is concerned, obviously there is no progress, but we are doing one pilot, in collaboration with one company, and let us see how it will be successful and how it will be useful for the highways. Because this is right now we are doing a pilot for a passenger vehicle up to 30 kilowatt capacity, but the plan or the expectation of Mr. Gadkari is for the commercial vehicles and on the highway. So it will take some time, but definitely we are trying a wireless charging facility for the passenger vehicles. So based on that result, how it will take for.
I'm sorry? Yeah, with some kind of pantograph. He has not identified exactly how it is to be done. It simply says it will be on the move.
Yeah.
Right?
Just
Require
to
modification of
add,
all the vehicles.
yeah. So maybe I think even the Ministry of Power Guidelines, it recognizes the pantograph charging level 4, which we call level 4 charging of 250 kilowatt and upwards, up to 500 kilowatt capacity pantograph charging. That is the technology I think which they're proposing for these Delhi, Mumbai and other expressway. But here the technology is available because if you look at the guidelines, it's a level 4 charging they are specified for electric heavy duty vehicles with the pantograph charging facility. Here, on the contrary part is like we need to have the compatible electric vehicle model, which at least I can take such high currents on the go pantograph facilities. So nonetheless, I think still the infra part has to be put in place whenever you want to have build up such like high capacity station. While this discussion is happening, I was thinking like now many of the companies are also offering the portable charging stations are a kind of mobile EV charging stations where the capacity goes from say 100 kilowatt, they're able to at least scale up to say 500 kilowatt capacity. Maybe that would be a good use case for highways and expressway to ascertain the business case and utilization from the EV charging station. Because once we put up a stationary charging station, the entire asset is being built at a location. Instead of like building at a location, so rather we could look at a moving mobile EV charging stations with a storage capacity, and maybe they could explore different locations to ascertain the use case and the utilization levels. And once they're ascertain, once they're clear of the utilization level, then we could look at building up an mega EV charging facility with which can accommodate multiple charging cases for different vehicle segment. And just want to give a feedback on this question on the roaming and interoperability. But since like, if you look at the Indian charge point operators, they work in silos. It's not interconnected. Say, for example, an X charge point operator would list his EV charging station on his X mobile app only. And maybe like Y charging station operator would like list in the Y app only. The both are not interconnected. But of late, what you have seen is like some of the CPOs are doing a peer-to-peer engagement through and roaming and interoperability through the OCPI protocol. Here they're trying to complement both. Maybe like an X company has a presence in the North India, and maybe they would like to handshake with a Y company in South India because they're not competing, they're complementing. That's happening on a peer-to-peer basis, but at the national level, now we have only Discovery app, which will not give you the facility for charging. But at the state level, we are trying to experiment and explore that options too. We want to bring in common app where at least I can get all the charge point operators to list their EV charging station, and we could build a digital platform where that interoperability and settlement could happen. And based on the commercial terms agreed between multiple CPOs, these payments could be settled. So this would resolve the user issues of having or need to download multiple apps. There is a limitation for doing that.
And that's where the regulators also come in.
Yes.
Regulator would force this, I think. And this would help in case of cross-border trade also.
Absolutely. I
Charging
agree.
moving across borders.
So Delhi, we are working on this. So working on this, like building this interoperability and roaming platform to have an user convenience for accessing all the EV charging station in the city, and maybe perhaps we can expand to other states too.
Another question.
Hello,
If you
sir.
can take up one more question.
As you have
and then
told
we'll line up
that
with- yes.
Tata approached Discom and they are waiting their connection from the last 6 months. I have just a suggestion, or you can say an advice. Whenever a highway is being built, many local dhabas, restaurant, Reliance retail stores, Adani, why not a UPRC, DRC or a regulatory commission implement a rule that whenever you are going to take a connection from a Discom, you have to implement or you have to build a charging station with a single machine only.
Okay, we'll take up this maybe in our one of the recommendation to all the key stakeholders.
Because, and you have, as you have already told that EV trucks, you are going to work on EV trucks, EV buses. But have you ever thought or have you ever imagined that EV is accessible to upper middle class or rich people? And when you are saying that by 2023 or 2025, you have be doing electrification of all EV vehicles, then what is the way forward for approaching the EV accessibility to middle class people or
Right, right. Maybe in the cities it has been taken care of, but on the highways, yes, there are problems. We are trying to solve it. In the interest of time, I would now request Girish, who is chair of the session, to give us his closing remark, and then we'll bind up. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand, and special thanks to all the panelists for. It's not an easy subject. It's a very tough subject, and thank you all of you for taking your time and asking some excellent questions. As I said, electrifying highways is not an easy problem, but we have to get to the root of the need for that, and that's electrifying the long-haul transportation, right? The charging infrastructure is the means, it's not the end. The end is how do we electrify our trucks and how do we electrify our intercity buses? That's the question. I think the panelists did an excellent job. If I could highlight and summarize that a bit, I think some of the questions with respect to, if I can start with the K2K drive or K2K express, if I can call, right? Kashmir to Kanyakumari drive. A part of this is about how a truck or a bus can travel all the way from Kashmir to Kanyakumari or vice versa. The integration with local utility becomes very critical, right? Because we pass through a lot of utility territories, a lot of regulations. While you mentioned about telecom, yes, it's regulated. Utility, at least in the United States, and it's true in many different parts of the world, is heavily regulated, one of the most regulated industry because electricity is a critical infrastructure. How do we engage utilities and ensure that the integration of the charging infrastructure, the billing can happen very seamlessly, I think is a very important topic that we can address. The market design aspect of it, especially what Anand mentioned in terms of settlement, there are many innovative ways of doing it. He talked about one way of doing it, but there could be other ways that the market and new companies can come and innovate. And we also talked about a little bit about the higher capacity charging. If you're going from the K2K Express is going from one place to the other, the current charging levels are not enough to some extent to accommodate that fast charging. So we may need up to 150 to 300 kilowatts or even more. In the United States, we are looking at close to 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, 3 megawatt charging, what we call megawatt DC fast chargers. So that might be another area that we should certainly consider, but not at the cost of installing the charging stations and not having anybody charge there. I think Anand touched upon it, is the utilization factor plays a very critical role. To really improve have an innovative business model, the utilization has to exist. There should be somebody charging it and paying for it. I think that plays a very critical role. And to enable that, financing is an important factor. I think, Mohan, you mentioned about the financing aspect of that as well. So bringing all of these together, the K2K Express to enable this and electrifying highways is certainly an important objective, and I think the panelists gave some ideas of what could be, not necessarily everything, but hopefully this will encourage India and motivate India into transitioning the electric mobility in the trucks and the intercity buses sector as well. So thank you.
Facilitate the memento to Mr. Nilesh Kane. Now I would request Mr. N. Mohan to come up. Thank you. Now I would request Mr. Anant Venkateswaran, please kindly come and take the appreciation. Thank you. Now it's your turn. Oh, I'm one of the speakers. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hope this was a good session for you. See you next year. Thank you.